All right, are you guys ready for some answers? I will announce to the general crowd, just real quick, we are running, as always, a little bit behind. If you made plans for an 11 o'clock semi or heat, what the hell were you thinking? All right, names of seas starting with F. Flores Sea in the Philippines. By the way, who named the seas of the moon anyways? Like, when people name things, generally we name things because of one of two things. Either someone lived there and gave it a local name for what the feature was, or someone else showed up who had written language and conquered it and decided to call it something. Obviously, neither of those were the case for the moon. Quick aside on the aside, the idea that people name things just as a single thing and then others come over and rename the thing is actually pretty common in etymology. There are a lot of tautologically, I don't know the word, a lot of things named after themselves twice. For example, Thun was the Scottish word for fortress, and when the English took over, they called it Castle Thun. Or a German tribe called the local river Elbe, meaning the river, and eventually that just became the Elbe River. Or an African tribe called the local lake Sod, meaning lake, and explorers came and declared it Chad Lake, taking that word. For an extreme example, there was an Asian tribe that named the river near them the Kong, meaning the river. They were conquered by Thailand, who renamed it the Kong River, Mekong, and then Europeans came over and called it the Mekong River, meaning the river, river, river. So generally we only name things when we've got multiples of them, and there clearly aren't multiples of the moon, so what happened? Well, for the longest time, no one felt any need to name the features of the moon, at least in a way that anyone else cared about. But once telescopes in the Renaissance started to be powerful enough, then people started documenting the features of the moon. And when they documented the features of the moon, of course, they had to name the features of the moon. But it wasn't like normal exploration where you name things as you encounter them. It was much closer to a child's activity mat at a restaurant where you fill everything in at once. And so you had a bunch of different maps, all of which had completely different names on it, circling around Europe in the Renaissance. The map that eventually won out was by this guy, Giovanni Riccioli. Riccioli was a Jesuit monk who loved two things, astronomy and physics. In fact, his main goal in life was to recreate all of Galileo's experiments using better measuring tools and better techniques, to the point that he would drop objects, and he had designed a pendulum that would swing at a second interval, and then trained his local church choir to sing to that meter so that he could hear them singing and exactly calculate when the objects hit the ground. He applied that same meticulous nature to his map, but more importantly, he named everything on the map after natural features, the Sea of Tranquility, the Ocean of Storms, things like that. Other maps were named after local nobles or kings or other patrons who had paid for the maps, which meant that no country wanted to use the map that had someone else's king on the name of it, and Riccioli's neutral map became the accepted standard that everyone could agree on. Now, you may be asking, how does a Jesuit monk, just 30 years after Galileo was condemned for heresy, How does a Jesuit monk get away with being politically neutral? Well, the answer is he claimed he believed in the anti-Copernicus method, that is, the sun going around the Earth. And yet, he named a bunch of features of the moon around the Copernican astronomers, such as Copernicus, such as Galileo. And when the church called him out on this and asked what he was doing, he pointed out that all of the Galilean astronomers were up here in the ocean of storms, and all of the Jesuit non-Copernican astronomers were here on dry land, obviously proving his loyalties. And the church bought it. All right, continuing on with L, Labrador Sea, Lazarev Sea. N is my way of punishing the diplomacy players who didn't show up here. S. I do want to talk also about the Sargasso Sea. The Sargasso Sea is unique in the world for being the only sea that is not bordered by land. The Sargasso Sea is unique in that it is entirely bordered by Gulf currents. It's named after the seaweed that floats on the surface of it, the sargassum, which is a Portuguese word for small grapes, which is what Portuguese sailors thought it resembled. The sargassum is the main ecosystem of the Sargasso Sea, with unique animals that live within it and feed upon it. But the sargassum was a bane to sailors, European sailors, because European sailors had never seen seaweed that floated on the surface of the ocean. As soon as they saw the sargassum, they assumed they were in shallow waters, despite being hundreds of feet above the bottoms, and so they hated going through the Sargasso. In addition, the Sargasso being between all of the Gulf Stream currents is an easy place to be becalmed. No winds, no direction, just get stuck there. And as a result, in the 19th and 20th century, Sargasso was often used as a literary metaphor for being mired, being stuck. Now, that is different from the somewhat overlapping Bermuda Triangle, which means being lost to the world. The Sargasso means not knowing how to get out. And of course, the overlap is that 6-hour game of terraforming Mars you got stuck in once. That 10 years later, I'm still a little bitter about. All right. Elementary school supplies. Again, I have a small list. Feel free to circle if you think you've got a good answer here. Folders and freezer bags. Index cards and ink pen. L. N. And S. Okay, so for internet slang acronyms, again, this is a family-friendly audience, so the ones I've had to rework the meanings of, I put in italics, so you recognize them, all right? So. All right, moving on. First of I. Second one. For L. N. S. All right. So before we get into sayings, two quick notes. First is, I am not particular about the exact wording the Oxford English Dictionary gives for these. If you get the gist of it, that's fine. Like if the answer is feed a cold and starve a fever, and you give feed a cold but starve a fever, sure, that's fine. If you say feed a fever and starve a cold, because who the hell remembers what direction that sentence goes, just fine, that's good for me. And then the second one is, feel free to circle liberally, because as the OED says, the good is the enemy of the best, which is not at all how anyone human would say it, but whatever. All right, we're gonna go through this a little bit quick because there are a lot of them, and if you don't see it and think your answer is good, just circle it, it's fine. So fact is stranger than fiction. Fair play is a jewel, faith will move mountains, familiarity breeds contempt. Fear the Greeks bearing gifts, feed a cold, starve a fever. Continuing on, finders, keepers. Starting with I, we got a lot of ifs here. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Next if. Next if, now to its. If anyone goes into eye roll shock, please let us know. We do have doctors in here. L's. Laughter is the best medicine. Continuing on. Of course, the famous saying, nearer is my kirtle, but nearer is my smock. I think I heard that at the Power Grid finals. So I did try my best to cut out things like Sussex won't be druv and other exceedingly British statements. And then S. All right, are we ready for movies? Now that we are done with sayings, thank God. F. I. L. There's only one L. Little Shop of Horrors. First half of S. All right, are you ready for your round 4? There's no M. Okay. Real quick announcement before we get into these. People, when you gather up your papers, if one person can hold them up for the AGMs to grab rather than just put them in the middle of the table where the AGM has to precariously balance over the table, it would be greatly appreciated, all right? All right, are you ready for your round 4 categories? Unique pieces and parts of the brain, you're welcome. Oh, and I forgot. Pieces and parts, things you would see labeled on a medical diagram: nerves, lobes, glands, blood vessels, specific cellular material like the meninges, or the accessory nerve, which controls neck and shoulder muscles, in addition to tracking which rings you're equipped with and what their set bonuses are. Unique, and this is important, unique means they have to be directly related to the brain, spine, and nervous system, and not just general stuff. Do not answer atoms. That is not unique to the brain. All right, second one, regular Sesame Street Muppets. Now I realize saying regular is a bit extreme with Muppets that look like this. But what I mean by regular are recurring, showing up in more than one episode. So no to Mick Swagger, who sang "I Can't Get No Cooperation." No to David Attenborough, who showed up once to catalog the Muppets. Instead, think of characters like Elmo, the often controversial Muppet. Oh God, this joke. Okay, so I wrote this slide 3 weeks ago to talk about how Elmo has a Twitter account where he asked if everyone, just checking in, how's everyone doing? And the Twitter responded exactly how you think the Twitter would respond, leading to Elmo saying, "Wow, Elmo is glad he asked," with a tone that sounded like he was backing away slowly. And that was a very nice and fun joke. And if you're not aware, a week ago, Elmo's Twitter account was hacked. And in addition to many racist and anti-Semitic things that were posted on Elmo's account, there was also a demand to release the Epstein files. which I can only read in his high-pitched voice, and it makes it insane. So, all right. Muppets, by the way, Muppet names follow standard celebrity naming conventions. If it's a weird name, you can do first name or last name, your choice. Named, it has to be a named character, not just a species. You can't just say monster. That's not a valid answer, all right? Remember, all right, brands of chewing gum distributed in the US, UK, Canada, or Australia. By brands, I mean label names, not flavors. There are, for example, a bunch of flavors of Big League Chew, but we are only looking for Big League Chew, the name of the brand, which is a lot of success for a bubblegum that started out as a substitute for chewing tobacco for baseball players. All right, NHL players with over 1,000 points. No one told me Kurt Schilling was going to be here, so I did hockey. I'm sorry. Points are tracked by the NHL and count both goals and assists. For example, Guy Lafleur with 1,353 points. Movies featuring Robin Williams. You know this one, you've already got it. All right, round 4 letters. Are you ready? C, F, G, H, and O. Good luck.